Chapter 3. Where Thoughts Come From. First, I would like to make some distinctions now about metaphysics not being a place. I would like to view and direct our studies of metaphysics as a process, the essence behind this reality. It is here I would like to do some more experiments with our metaphysical object. So let us again create our blue ball. You may, if you like, read the first part of this experiment, then close your eyes and try them before we question the results. It will be best if you do this so that we do not enter the experiment with some preconceived idea, but see what naturally happens, and this is the idea behind any experiment. So it's best to do this experiment before reading on to the examination. In our first experiment, imagine holding our blue ball just as we had created it earlier. Now, lightly toss the blue ball, in your imagination, in front of you. In our next experiment, let us imagine two blue balls. Okay, you can make one red if you would like. Place one on the floor or on an imaginary table in front of you about 5 feet away. Now throw the ball that you are holding at the other one. In our last experiment, place the ball some distance from you and shoot it with a gun. Imagine, if you can, the gun's sound and power. After you have done these, we will examine them. Remember as much as you can. You may even write down the outcomes of these experiments as a reference. Notes. Examinations. How well did you do? Can you picture these events in your mind? What can we learn? You may notice that you can imagine the blue ball easier or clearer as we already know what it looks like, and as we think of it more, it becomes familiar. So, the repetition of a thought reinforces it. In our first experiment, we threw the ball. As you visualize this act, did the ball fall to the ground? If it did, we have just seen the actions of metaphysical gravity. Wherever this ball exists, it seems to have similar physical laws that govern it. In this physical reality, our blue ball has no mass and could not hit any floor. If it did, as you imagined it, there must be some principle behind this action. Your ball may have even bounced off your metaphysical floor or rolled away. The next experiment may have different results based upon your observation of it. But are you observing or creating the imaginations? Did you know the outcomes before you imagined it, and if so, where did that come from? Once the thought was there, even as you read the instructions, the whole process may have played out in your mind and the event was done. What could some of our metaphysical balls and actions be? Look at your own experiments and compare. I may even assume that some of you in throwing the ball may have missed your target. For those of you that hit, did your ball go straight to your target ball, gravity being marginal? When they hit, did the other ball move? Did your thrown ball bounce in some direction away from the ball hit or continue on? If your ball went relatively straight, we have metaphysical inertia. When it hit the other ball, and if the stationary ball moved away, we have transfer of energy. If your thrown ball bounced away from the ball hit, we have Newton's first law, quote, "For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction," end quote. How do your results compare? The last experiment placed the ball some distance from you. Did your perception of the metaphysical ball appear smaller? The physics that account for this have to do with light waves, and if indeed your ball appeared smaller, we can add metaphysical light to our list of some physical laws we may have observed. As far as shooting it, did you hear the sound of the gun? Well, in this case I asked you to, but the point is still the same. For that matter, did you hear anything hit your blue ball, or did it even pop? What happened to your blue ball and why? This I leave for your own study. I wanted to add metaphysical sound to our list if you imagined hearing anything. One of the primary things I wish to emphasize in these exercises is the action and events we are also able to create within our metaphysical universe. We can see that our physical universe is not just made up of objects that sit in space, but of actions related to these objects. In Aristotle's first concepts of the metaphysical, it was based primarily on the essence and ideas of an object, its form. In his view, there were four main parts to the cause of things, and he considered metaphysics the considered, quote, True knowledge is the knowledge of ultimate cause." End quote. The four causes he mentioned are, quote, "the formal cause, which deals with a plan or type of object." Quote, "the final cause, which is the purpose of the object." Quote, "the material cause, which implies the matter used in the object." Quote, "the efficient cause, that causes the change." To look at this in a process of creation, we first come up with a plan of an object, say a blue ball. Here, of course, the purpose should also be instilled into the object, say, so we can play with our blue ball in a game. Next is the actual matter, what we make our blue ball out of, like plastic. Last is forming the ball into the plan out of the plastic. Metaphysics also goes into the creation, essence, and idea behind an event. So it is that now we have some metaphysical events that we created with our blue ball. These events never took place in our physical world, but they could. We could get a real ball, even one we made from the image of our blue ball, and toss it, throw it at another, or even shoot it. Right now we are looking into the metaphysical aspects of objects and events before they become physical. This is the area of thoughts and ideas, not to mention the interactions of emotions. So, let us look into the source of these first. We know that the mind is the non-physical or metaphysical part of us. So what is the mind and thought? First, let's clarify the meaning of the mind and what part of ourselves we think of in this way. Because of the main premise of this book, I will not be using the psychological viewpoint to any extent, but the viewpoint from the other side. In this light, we will look at what is said about the mind, ego, consciousness, subconscious, and those parts we consider our higher selves or essence of being. Then discuss each to put the picture together of our thought process. Seth has a lot to say about the subject, and I would not want to place all of it within this book. In this case, I will have to just take portions that fit the needs we have at the time to get the idea across. We will start this exploration by what we can find in reference to the mind. The nature of the psyche. Session 763. Quote, "As it is, you express very little of your entire personhood. My remark has nothing to do with your accepted concepts of the unconscious portion of the self. Your ideas of the unconscious are so linked to your limited ideas of personhood as to be meaningless in this said, quote, 'This is a proper expression of my personhood,' end quote. It is not just that there are other functions of the mind unused, but that in those terms you have other minds. You have one brain, it is true, but you allow it to use only one station, or to identify itself with only one mind of many. It seems evident to you that one person has one mind. You identify with the mind you use. If you had another, then it would seem as if you must be someone else. A mind is a psychic pattern through which you interpret and form reality. You have physical limbs that you can see. You have minds that are invisible. Each one can organize reality in a different fashion. Each one deals with its own kind of knowledge. These minds all work together to keep you alive through the physical structure of the brain. When you use all of these minds, then and only then do you become fully aware of your surroundings. You perceive reality more clearly than you do now, more sharply, brilliantly, and concisely. At the same time, however, you comprehend it directly. You comprehend what it is apart from your physical perception of it. You accept as yourself these other states of consciousness native to your other minds. You achieve true personhood." End quote. These other minds are not so foreign to us if we think in terms of the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the dreaming mind, the spiritual mind, and other portions of ourselves that we are not aware of in this physical focus. We do know of the existence of these, though, and I don't think the notion of something like the subconscious mind can be disputed. I would also like to point out something else here that is of interest. That is, that we change our mind sometimes within moments. As we go through life, we go through seasons of a sort where we may change beliefs, ideas, or concepts. We may as a fact see the world in a different way than when we did, say, when we were very young. Our focus in our lives change with us very well, sometimes because we have changed, and sometimes the initiation of this change, as when you become a parent. I would even say our personalities change. Just consider some of the behaviors when you were a teenager as compared to later years. So let's consider each of these mind parts separately. We have already clarified much about the ego as part of the conscious mind that is primarily focused in the awake physical world, so I will not look into this much further at this point. But what else can we know about consciousness? There is far too much information about this within the Seth writings alone for an entire book on that subject. So here I will just give more information related to the field of metaphysics and thoughts, since this is what our search is for. The first section we will look at with consciousness in mind is that it is not physical. Seth Speaks, Session 512. Quote, "Consciousness is a way of perceiving various dimensions of reality. Consciousness as you know it is highly specialized. The physical senses allow you to perceive the three-dimensional world, and yet by their very nature can inhibit the perception of other equally valid dimensions. Most of you are identifying with one portion of your body and ignoring all of the parts, and yet you are doing the same thing when you imagine that the egotistical self carries the burden of your identity. I am telling you that you are not a cosmic bag of bones and flesh thrown together through some mixture of chemicals and elements. I am telling you that your consciousness is not some fiery element, formed merely accidentally through the inner workings of chemical components. You are not a forsaken offshoot of physical matter, nor is your consciousness meant to vanish like a puff of smoke. Instead, you form the physical body that you know on a deeply unconscious level, with great discrimination, miraculous clarity, and intimate unconscious knowledge of each minute cell that compose it. This is not meant symbolically. Now, because your conscious mind as you think of it is not aware of these activities, you do not identify with this inner portion of yourselves. You prefer to identify with the part of you who watches TV or cooks or works. The part you think knows what it is doing. But this seemingly unconscious portion of yourself is far more knowledgeable, and upon its smooth functioning your entire physical existence depends. This portion is conscious, aware, alert. It is you, so focused in physical reality, who do not listen to its voice, who do not understand that it is the greater psychological strength from which your physical-oriented self springs. I call this seemingly unconscious the, quote, inner ego, end quote, for it directs inner activity. It correlates information that is perceived not through the physical senses, but through other inner channels. It is the inner perceiver of reality that exists beyond the three-dimensional. It carries within it the memory of each of your past existences. It looks into subjective dimensions that are literally infinite, and from these subjective dimensions all objective realities flow." End quote.